Do you feel like your baby has reflux, but you're not really sure in terms of the different characteristics? Here are 8 different signs that your baby may or may not potentially have reflux. Before we dig into the 8 signs, I'm Adriana. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist and NICU therapist of 13 years. I too had a son who had feeding difficulties as well as developmental delays. And I totally understand that the first year of life was really, really tough and also very confusing because there's so much information out there, which is a reason why I created this channel, to be able to help parents and empower families to demystify overall milestones in order to create an optimal foundation for your baby's future. So subscribe to my channel if you would love to learn more. The first year of life, which is the toughest year. Now, as a feeding therapist, let's talk about the 8 different signs that I see and I notice when a baby potentially has reflux. Now, the very obvious one is the baby's obviously spitting up a lot of the food during feeding and even after feeding. And there's some babies that have a little bit more severe reflux where it's even after 30, 40 minutes or even an hour after feeding and it's not really digesting inside their tummy, and you notice that there's a pretty significant amount. It could be a little small puddle, a medium-sized puddle, a very large one. This is one sign that we notice that your baby may potentially have reflux. Number 2, babies while feeding end up arching their back and they start crying because once they end up intaking a certain amount of volume, they start feeling that it's like a buildup and pressure system where they start wanting to spit up. Number 3, even when the bottle is not inside the mouth and you're potentially burping them or you're giving them a break and you right away notice that something potentially came up and they're swallowing what they have in their mouth. And this can also be a sign of silent reflux, meaning that the spit up basically came up towards the esophagus to the mouth. Nothing came out, but they're swallowing what they have in their mouth. Number 4 is coughing when nothing is in their mouth and when you're potentially burping them or when you're again giving them that break and you right away notice that they start coughing or even gagging, which brings me to number 5. Number 6 is when the baby ends up eating a certain amount of volume or food and they're just completely refusing to even want more. And they're either burping or they have multiple swallows, like I've mentioned in the past. And this is the refusal of eating can potentially also be a sign of the silent reflux or reflux overall, because it feels like the acidity of the reflux ends up burning the esophagus and it's not feeling very comfortable for the poor baby. Number 7 is irritability after feeding. And again, irritability can also be associated along with the arching or even with the multiple swallows. So that irritability may most likely be after feeding. Number 8 is projectile vomiting. Projectile vomiting is definitely not normal. And this is where you need to contact the pediatrician as soon as possible. And in order for you guys to find out what is the root cause of this projectile vomit on your little one, because again, they could end up losing weight and it can affect them from wanting to bottle feed as well too. Now, these 8 characteristics of reflux signs, they don't have to have all 8 of them all at the same time. They can have certain types of signs of reflux, but if you do end up seeing some of these signs, it's really important to attempt to discuss this with your pediatrician, especially if your baby ends up having a little bit of a feeding issue, if they have a weight gain issue, or you're noticing that they're really feeling very uncomfortable in terms of when they're bottle feeding or breastfeeding as well too.